Culture means the way a group of people lives. In the left picture, notice the food, music, clothing, and daily activities. Civilization usually means a society has developed more complex systems. On the right, we can see examples such as writing, cities, public buildings, and metallurgy. So, culture and civilization are related, but they are not exactly the same. This picture shows a simple cause and effect chain. First, rivers provided water for daily life and farming. Second, river floods brought fertile soil to the land. When farming became more stable, more people could live together in one place. That is why many early civilizations are also called river civilizations. Here we can see 4 major ancient civilizations on the map. They are Mesopotamian civilization, Egyptian civilization, Indian civilization, and Chinese civilization. Please notice that each one developed near an important river system. For example, Egypt was connected to the Nile River, while China was connected to the Yellow River and the Yangtze River. Rivers were not just background scenery. They were the stage where early civilizations grew. This sentence shows how people in the ancient Mediterranean world respected Eastern civilizations. In the picture, the figure looks toward the east, where Egypt and Mesopotamia developed early. These civilizations influenced areas such as mathematics, astronomy, and science. The images here are illustrations, not actual historical photos. The main idea is that early knowledge from the East helped shape later civilizations. This map shows several important areas of ancient Mesopotamian civilization. Please look for the Fertile Crescent, the Eastern Mediterranean coast, Asia Minor, and the Iranian Plateau. The Two Rivers region is especially important because it lay between the Tigris River and the Euphrates River. These regions became important meeting points for people, goods, and ideas. So Mesopotamia was not one small, isolated place, but a wider historical stage. The Two Rivers region was located between the Tigris River and the Euphrates River. Today, this area is mostly within Iraq. The Greeks called it Mesopotamia, which means the land between rivers. In the map, notice how the rivers run through a dry-looking environment. This helps us understand why water control was so important there. This slide explains the basic conditions for civilization in Mesopotamia. First, the two rivers brought water to the land. Second, floods left rich soil, which helped crops grow. With better farming, people could produce more food and support larger communities. Over time, villages became cities, and city life became more complex. The map shows that Mesopotamia stood near the meeting point of Europe, Asia, and Africa. The land was mostly low and flat, with few natural barriers. Because of this, outside groups could enter the region more easily. This made invasions and political changes more frequent. So the same open geography that helped exchange also brought instability. This slide shows movement, contact, and change in the Two Rivers region. Because different groups moved through the area, political power changed often. At the same time, people exchanged goods, skills, languages, and ideas. This made Mesopotamian culture more diverse. But frequent movement also created long-term insecurity, which affected literature and thought. This slide shows the development of Sumerian city-states, step by step. Around 3500 BCE, the Sumerians appeared in the Two Rivers region. They built irrigation systems to guide river water into fields. When dry land became fertile farmland, harvests increased and life improved. As settlements grew larger, cities, temples, and institutions appeared. Cuneiform was invented by the Sumerians. In the center, notice the wedge-shaped marks pressed into a clay tablet. People wrote with a reed stylus on soft clay, and the tablet hardened after drying. Cuneiform could record trade, laws, and government affairs. Because of writing, knowledge and institutions could be passed down instead of disappearing like a forgotten homework sheet. This slide shows two important fields, astronomy and mathematics. The Sumerians created a lunar calendar and divided a year into 12 months. They also used a base 60 counting system. Even Even today, 1 minute has 60 seconds, so we can still see this influence in daily life. Ancient knowledge may be old, but it did not simply stay in the past. The Code of Hammurabi was created to organize laws across different areas. In the middle, we see an illustration of the black stone monument. The upper part shows Hammurabi receiving authority from the sun god, while the lower part contains cuneiform writing. It is one of the earliest complete written law codes. By writing laws down, rulers could govern with clearer rules and stronger authority. One special feature of the Code of Hammurabi was the principle of retaliation. The famous idea was an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. This meant that a person who harmed others would receive a related punishment. The purpose was to maintain social order. However, we should also notice that punishments were not always equal for people of different social classes. This slide helps us think more carefully about justice in ancient society. People of the same social class could receive similar physical punishments. But when a higher-ranking person harmed a lower-ranking person, money could sometimes replace punishment. The examples show that the law cared about order, but it also reflected social inequality. So the Code of Hammurabi was important, but it was not the same as modern equality before the law. The key idea on this slide is military strength. Look at the center picture. We can see soldiers, horses, and war chariots moving forward together. The Assyrians were known for fighting, and they used many kinds of weapons with flexible tactics. They were also skilled at cavalry and chariot warfare, and their army was well organized. Because of this strong military power, they built a large empire across parts of Asia and Africa. This slide reminds us that the Chaldeans were not only rulers, but also observers of the sky. Notice the pictures of the stars, the constellations, and the 7-day week. Their capital was Babylon, so their empire is also called the Neo-Babylonian Empire. They carefully observed astronomy, developed astrology, and helped shape how constellations were named. Even today, calendars and ideas about the week still show their influence. This is a summary slide, so please watch the order of the 4 powers. First came the Sumerians, then Babylon, then Assyria, and finally Chaldea. The pictures also remind us that although rulers changed, some cultural traditions continued. Trade was active, so contracts and laws became important, and cuneiform was often used to record them. So Mesopotamia changed politically many times, but its civilization kept developing. Many students mix up these two ideas, so this slide helps us compare them. Look at the map in the middle. The Fertile Crescent is the larger curved region. It stretches from the Two Rivers region westward to the eastern coast of the Mediterranean. Mesopotamia means the land between the Tigris and Euphrates, so it is only one part of that larger area. So the answer is no. They are related, but they are not the same thing. Please notice the ship and the map of the Mediterranean. The Phoenicians were skilled sailors and merchants, so they traveled widely by sea. They built colonies along the Mediterranean coast and were active between Europe, Asia, and Africa. Because they moved from place to place, they carried goods, ideas, and cultural influences with them. That is why we call them a cultural bridge. This slide shows how writing became simpler. Instead of using many complex symbols, the Phoenicians reduced writing to a small set of letters. Look at the example of water on the right. It shows how a picture could gradually become a sound and then a letter. Later, this alphabet spread into Europe and became an important source for many later writing systems. So a simpler alphabet made learning, recording, and sharing knowledge much easier. This slide shows a route of migration, so follow the arrows carefully. The Hebrews first lived in the region of Palestine, then moved to Egypt because of famine. In Egypt, they were once treated as slaves, and later they left under the leadership of Moses. After that journey, they were not just movement on a map, but also an important part of their history and identity. This slide shows a long process, not one single event. After King Solomon died, the kingdom split into two parts. Israel in the north and Judah in the south. Later, Israel was conquered by Assyria, and Judah was conquered by Chaldea. Much later, in 1948, the State of Israel was re-established. So when you look at this slide, notice both the losses and the later reappearance. The most important idea here is monotheism, the belief in one God. Judaism teaches belief in the one true God, Yahweh, and its scripture is the Hebrew Bible, which later became the Old Testament in Christianity. The slide also shows that the Hebrews believed they were God's chosen people, and that Palestine was the promised land. Most importantly, Judaism had a strong influence on two later religions, Christianity and Islam. So one religion from ancient West Asia shaped a very large part of world history. The main focus of this slide is iron technology. The Hittites were among the earliest peoples to use iron on a large scale. Because iron tools and weapons were stronger than bronze ones, they improved both farming and warfare. This helped West Asia move from the Bronze Age into the Iron Age. So the Hittites were important because their metalworking changed everyday life and military power. Please look at the map and the arrows showing expansion. The Persians lived on the Iranian plateau and rose in power around the 6th century BCE. They conquered West Asia, Egypt, and the eastern Mediterranean coast. In this way, they built the first great empire in history that stretched across Europe, Asia, and Africa. Later, however, this empire was defeated by Alexander the Great. This slide is about smart administration, not just conquest. Notice the 5 key methods: dividing the empire into provinces, building roads, creating a postal system, centralizing power, and respecting local cultures. The road system and relay stations helped messages travel quickly across long distances. At the same time, the emperor kept control, but still allowed different peoples to keep their own customs. That is why the Persian Empire could stay stable, efficient, and relatively harmonious. This slide asks us to look for details in the artwork. The palace and reliefs show that Persian art borrowed from many different regions. The builders and artists included people influenced by Greece, Babylon, and Egypt. The long row of tribute bearers at the bottom also shows many peoples bringing offerings in different styles of dress. So Persian art reflected both imperial order and the cultural diversity of the empire. The center of this slide is the struggle between good and evil. Zoroastrianism was founded by Zoroaster, and it teaches that the universe contains two opposing forces. Ahura Mazda represents light and goodness, while Ahriman represents darkness and evil. Human beings must choose which side they will follow. So this religion teaches not only belief, but also moral responsibility. Please do not think this means people worshipped fire itself as a god. In this religion, fire was a symbol of light, justice, purity, and the sacred. That is why temples often had a holy fire altar. The picture on the right helps you see this symbol clearly, with the fire placed in front of the temple. So the name fire worship comes from the importance of fire as a symbol. This final slide is a big summary, so try to connect each region with its key contribution. Mesopotamia gave us writing, laws, astronomy, and mathematics. The Eastern Mediterranean brought the alphabet and monotheistic religious traditions, while Asia Minor is linked to ironworking. The Iranian plateau is remembered for imperial administration, roads, and religious ideas. Together, these achievements became an important heritage that still influences the world today.